It looks perfect.
Yay.
All right, well, thank you everyone for standing by, and welcome to the Aquatic Invasive Species Nab The Aquatic Invader webinar hosted by the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network Organisms and Trade Project. I am Jill Gentis-Banicki from Ohio Sea Grant and Stone Laboratory, and joining me today are Kirsten Hope Walker and Allison Neubauer from Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. Thank you both for joining us today. Before we get started, I would like to take a few minutes with the webinar viewers to get you familiar with the technology. During our presentation, all of you will be in a listen-only mode. If you would like to ask a question during the presentation, feel free to use the chat feature located on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll collect and pose those questions out to Kirsten and Allison at the end of their presentation. The speakers will be using their they will be sharing their screen, so that chat icon will show up at the very top of your screen. If you just want to roll over with your mouse, and you will see that chat icon. Just push that and you should be able to ask a question. Also, if you have any technical questions at any time, please feel free to use the chat feature. We have nearly 40 people right now participating in this webinar, a great diverse group representing educators from across the Great Lakes and around the country. Please keep questions coming throughout the presentation, and we should have a great Q&A session. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Illinois Indiana Sea Grant Organisms and Trade website for later viewing. Also, we will post a webinar survey in the chat feature toward the end of the presentation. Please feel free to, please take a few minutes after that webinar to fill out that survey. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce Kirsten Hope Walker and Allison Neubauer from Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. Kirsten Hope Walker is an environmental educator from Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. She works closely with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant specialists and teachers to develop classroom materials, curriculum, and websites. Her efforts help boost environmental literacy related to aquatic invasive species, disposal of unwanted medication, water quality, and other Sea Grant topic areas. Kirsten has more than 20 years of education experience, including 8 years of teaching high school science. She comes to Illinois Indiana Sea Grant from the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center, where she served as an environmental education specialist for 2 years. Allison Neubauer, also an Illinois Indiana Sea Grant educator, works to plan and facilitate training workshops and develop classroom resources. She also plays a key role in its undergraduate service learning courses at the University of Illinois by leading classroom activities and serving as a resource for students as they implement community projects. Allison began her tenure at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant in 2013 as a summer intern and later served as the program's education assistant. We are delighted to have both Kirsten and Allison here today to talk to us about Nab The Aquatic Invaders website, a great tool for teachers to use in their classrooms. Kirsten and Allison, I think you are ready to go. Your presentation is up, so feel free to, I think we're all set.
Great, Jill. Thank you for having us and doing all the logistics of this webinar. We're certainly glad that so many people have decided to join us tonight. We appreciate the time that you've dedicated to listening to us tonight. So we're going to be going over some of the educator resources for Nab The Aquatic Invader, like Jill said. And the way we're going to work this is I'm going to go through a very brief PowerPoint with aquatic invasive species background, including some research done at Oregon State University by a person by the name of Sky Root, who did a master's project on research on aquatic invasive species in the classroom. And then the survey that we were happy that many of you filled out, we used to compare and contrast what was in the research to what your answers were, and we were looking at those today, and we thought they were pretty compelling. Then Allison's going to take you through the NAB. We're going to talk about a few of the features within the Nab Aquatic Invader site, We'll have some of that within the PowerPoint. And then Allison's going to take you on a tour of the Nab The Aquatic Invader site. That's quite a mouthful. And then we'll open it up for questions. So let's get started with this. So I guess the biggest question everybody has is how did aquatic invasive species get here? These pathways include commercial shipping and barge traffic, researchers, aquaculture, public stocking, wild bait harvest, live bait used by anglers, the nursery trade, aquascaping, aquarium releases, and the pet trade. Of these 139 exotics specifically in the Great Lakes, 77 of those are from Eurasia, 18 are from the Atlantic Ocean, 12 are from Asia, 7 are from the Mississippi River Basin, and another 7 are from the Pacific and southern U.S. And there were 18 whose origin could not be documented. So there's a lot of ways that aquatic invasive species can travel to where they don't belong, and ballasts on ships tend to be a classic example of how they are carried, because many of the organisms are so small that they can be easily carried. So why are they such a nuisance? This Far Side cartoon kind of emphasizes the points about biological pollution, and they talk about luck here. But as you can see, biological invaders are not just lucky; they have an advantage. They frequently leave behind diseases, parasites, predators, competitors, and other factors that keep the populations in their native ranges in check. Because they're kept in check, these species usually are not a problem in their native habitat. Often they have attributes that give them a competitive advantage over our native species. And invasive species are non-native plants and animals that are usually aggressive and prolific species that mature very quickly. I kind of like to think of them as the rabbits of the waters. They have a life stage that usually allows them to spread quickly and adapt to environments where other native species may not be able to survive as well. So some of the impacts you can see, many of you may have heard of the goldfish out in near Lake Tahoe. The picture up here of the goldfish on the right is actually taken from Teller Lake in Boulder, Colorado, where they've gotten out of control. And it's interesting because when I ask little kids where you put a goldfish if you have to get rid of it, many of them say in the lake, in the river, a lot of places that they really don't belong, but they have no idea that goldfish are from China and don't belong natively in the lake. So some zebra mussels tend to outcompete for space and food in freshwater habitats, and aquariums have a habit of taking over lakes. So these costly measures by municipalities have to be undertaken to unclog pipes, and if anybody's ever stepped on a zebra mussel, they can be quite painful. So the research that we're kind of basing the PowerPoint on is by a master's student by the name of Sky Root in a 2010 Masters of Public Policy paper from Oregon State University, and it's entitled Exploring the Perspectives and Behaviors of Teachers on Invasive Species. They used focus groups throughout the U.S., but specifically focusing on Illinois and Indiana, working with the Sea Grant agencies, Oregon, Washington, and 2 places in Canada. And basically what they were trying to find out was how teachers may be a potential vector for distribution of aquatic invasive species. And you can find the PDF version of this research on the Oregon State University website right there. So from the questions that we asked you, It was based on some of the questions that the research asked these focus groups. So the first one is, how would you rate the importance of living plants and animals as teaching tools in your classroom? From the responses from the research, you see that it's very clear that the teachers felt that it was very important to someone important to use living plants and animals as teaching tools in the classroom. With a, that's a pretty significant amount of people who use them, and I, as a former teacher, I used them as well. Supported by the webinar audience, we had about 38 people that responded to the questionnaire that Jill sent out. It pretty much mirrors what the research said, with over almost 90% of people feeling that it was important to someone important to have living plants and animals in the classroom. So I thought that was rather interesting. So question number 2, indicate whether or not you have obtained your classroom plants or animals in the following ways. And this is from the research, and the pet store seems to be a significant area where a significant source of pets. I know that's where I got my pets, or not pets, but animals for classroom. Biological supply companies are pretty popular. Plant nurseries are also popular. And then the collection from the wild I thought was interesting but not surprising. I was more surprised that it wasn't a higher number in this part. And then with you all, with the webinar audience, the collected from the wild was actually a much higher percentage, whereas the biological supply house came in at close second. So I thought that was interesting and quite a contrast to the research group. For those of you who said they had plants or animals as teaching tools, we asked what kind you have, and this was a lot of animals, so I appreciate those of you who filled out and actually checked all those boxes. All right, from the, as reported by teachers in the research, there was a whole list of people with, obviously the fish and the plants were such a broad and general term that of course they're going to have the highest number because they were very non-specific. In the study, they kind of categorized by color which ones are considered invaders or potential invaders, but since they're not specific as to which frogs or which, worms or which beings we're talking about, there's that potential of figuring out, which ones specifically they're talking about. Goldfish are an obvious species that many elementary classrooms tend to have in their classrooms, so that tends to be a big number as well. Acorns are not considered, as reported by teachers, or they're not considered evasive, so that's why they're in the green. We didn't color code yours the same way because we figured the previous slide was good enough for that, but the fish and the plants kind of the same range, so there was a comparable amount there. So we thought that was interesting. And this is where it becomes an important tool for us to kind of figure out what people are using in their classroom to use to teach. We did not ask this question of you all, but we thought it was interesting that as reported by teachers of the invasive plants and animals, these were the specifics of those plants of what they said they had, from anywhere from sugar gliders to mother-in-law's tongue to night crawlers. Pothos plants are pretty popular. Radishes, I imagine, are because a lot of people do experiments because they're excellent to use to show growth, and then obviously goldfish being the most popular. So this question number 4, I think, is kind of the most important of the 4 questions, is to indicate whether or not you have disposed of live plants or animals in your classroom in each of the following ways. So how do you dispose of these live plants and animals? In the research, most of them kept them until they died on their own, which is great. Second most popular was given away to students, and this is where it becomes important to have education about aquatic invasive species and taking care of plants and animals and proper disposal with students, because it's at that point where they become responsible for the animal, and where their path goes from there is all determined by what kind of education they receive. I'm really glad there was a very low number for put in storm drain, because I was a little disturbed by that one. And where 15% were eaten, I just really want to know what was eaten. I just thought that was an interesting one as well. As reported by you all, 28%, which was the highest number, were kept in the classroom until they died. 17% were given away to students. So again, it's really important for education to the student about what to do with those animals as far as care and disposal come into play. And luckily, 0% of you said that you put things in storm drains, but some of you did put were eaten, so I really want to know what that is. I'm thinking carp. I would like to think it was carp, because carp is delicious. So Allison's going to be going through some of these aspects of the Nab Aquatic Invader site, but one of them is the Habitatitude site. And what this is really geared towards is aquarium owners and water gardeners, but it can also apply to classrooms as far as creating a good habitatitude towards classroom plants and animals, and making sure that you're good stewards for whatever those plants and animals may be, whether or not you keep them in the classroom or they go out into the world outside of the classroom. So they give a lot of great information on care and disposal of those animals. So it's a wonderful website. Don't let it loose. This is actually a flyer, and it can be a poster that gives some more specifics as to questions that are commonly asked by classroom teachers and the answers to those. So what should I do with unwanted classroom plants and animals is right there in the green block area, and it gives very specific details as to what you can do with those animals. So it's a really nice go-to for teachers and hobbyists to refer to when they're considering classroom plants and animals. And then on the back of that, or on part of that, thinking of getting a classroom plant or animal, it asks you the question and then gives you 3 things to think about before you actually bring an animal into the classroom. So it's great to plan ahead, do the research. A lot of people do that with their own pets. So a classroom pet should be considered the same way. So is it regulated? Is it a good resource? Do you have a plan for when school's out and nobody can take care of it? So you got to figure that out well ahead of time. And then there is there's a pledge form here that your classroom can do that allows you to kind of give ownership to your adopted classroom pet or plant, I guess you can apply this to as well, and how not to release it or dispose of it improperly. Allison's going to go through the Nab Aquatic Invader site, and we're having periodic internet issues, so we have backups just in case it gets naughty on us. So give us just a second here where we switch over formats here.
Okay, hi everyone. So this is the Nab The Aquatic Invader website. You might be able to see the URL on top there, but you can definitely, if you just type in Google Nab The Aquatic Invader, it's the first link. So it's not too hard to find, and we will provide that link for you as well. So this website is designed as both a resource for students and teachers. Students can come to the website, and it's themed as a detective sort of, it has a detective theme, so the students are required to do the research, find out about the species, and then what they do is they have to nab the aquatic invader. So it's specific by region. So if you look at the website here, there's one on each coast. We've got the Gulf, Atlantic, Pacific, and then the Great Lakes, which is what we're focusing on tonight. So if you click on the Great Lakes, you get this page, and so you can see there is a whole bunch of options here. The first thing you might want to look at is Meet the Suspects, and if you click on that page, it has the top 10 suspects, which is a nice range of plants and animals that are affecting the Great Lakes region. So you can click on each of these, and what it does is it pulls up an interrogation page. So it's something like this. You'll see this is the zebra mussel. And when you click on it, actually, for the younger students, it's nice. There's a narration that goes along with it. So it's, we'll read it out loud to you when you click it. This is the preloaded version, but I'll load the version for you now and let you listen to it for a little bit just so you get an idea.
Where are you from?
From the Caspian and Aral Seas in Eastern Europe and Western Asia.
How did you get here?
I came over as tiny larvae in the ballast water of ships that traveled from freshwater ports thousands of miles away. Once these ships reached the Great Lakes, the ballast water was dumped out and we were deposited as hitchhikers to this new freshwater system.
So you can kind of see how it's a little bit more of a story. I think younger students would be a little bit more inclined to listen to this being read to them than maybe the older students can just read through themselves, and we have also links to other websites that they can do research on. The part that I really like here, being a geographer by my background, my educational background, there's a link to the USGS website, and I really like the animated map. It goes through the years. It starts in 1986 for zebra mussels, and you can see the new introductions that are reported each year. So I'll let this play out just a little so you can see. Obviously, quite crowded as the years go on, and it goes all the way until 2015. And this, I think, is a nice way to show students how, you know, there's a really observable trend with how these are spread. And if you pause it, you can click through year by year, like this. The thing I think is pretty neat also is if you uncheck this cumulative box, what you're seeing are the new introductions each year. So by unclicking this cumulative box, these are all of the new introductions, and then you click cumulative and it shows the total. And from 1990, you see it's pretty limited to the Great Lakes, and then when you go to 1991, you can see how it's spread into the Mississippi River, Ohio River, and then all the way as you get to the 2000s, 2015, you can see we're all the way on the West Coast and then up in Canada. So zebra mussel is a good one to show the distribution, how it varies throughout time. The next feature I think that is worth pointing out for students, maybe I'll start from the home page. So when you get to the Great Lakes region, you see on the top here, these are the detectives, and each of these detectives has a specialty. So this is the biology, the spread, environmental impacts, economic impacts, and species control. So they each focus on a specific issue within invasive species. So for example, I'll click on Detective Summeride, who is the spread of invaders, is her specialty. And on the left-hand side here, you see there's junior detective and super sleuth. So these are activities for your students. Grades, I think it's 4 through 6 are junior detective. So those are a little bit easier. And then the super sleuth are grades 7 through 10. They're geared to a little bit of an older audience. This is an activity that we really like to do. We have paper versions of this, but this is the digital version. It's a graphic image, and you can see there's a lot going on. The students are asked to find 7 ways that aquatic exotics are spread. So looking at this situation and answering questions like, what vehicle can transport zebra mussels on its pontoon? So the students can go ahead, try to type in their answer here in this blank, and then when they scroll over, the answer pops up and you can see it says hydroplane is the correct answer. However, if you answered boat, thinking of a pontoon boat, your answer is correct too. Pilots should be aware of the status of invasive species in lakes as to avoid the possible transportation from an infested lake to an uninfested lake. So it tells them the answer, gives them a little bit of the background why that's a problem, and then tells them how to avoid spreading invasive species that way. So this is a good example of the kinds of activities that are on the website for your students to explore. Let me get back to my, okay, so this is background check. This is a little bit more geared towards the older audience, whereas those activities are more interactive. This is where you would go and click to get background information on the origin and distribution, transport, environmental impact, solutions for control, and economic impacts. And so here we link to other websites that house information based on these categories. So a little bit more independent research that students can do on their own. Back on that home page, I'll show you how to get here just a year. So we were just in the background check, which is over here. Down here, this little magnifying glass is the kids' secret headquarters. And this is a great resource for students. I like this Who's Who link because while it's fun to look at the animations of the different species and have them, you know, tell them their interrogation, what's their problem, where are they from, this is important to see what the species actually look like so students could identify them out in the environment. So it has all of the top 10 suspects here in their real form, and then these links go back to those interrogation pages so they can get that information when if they want to look up more. And then the What's New, again, links to outside websites that have more information. If they want to get more current news events, that sort of thing is housed there. Another great resource, if you're with your classroom and they have a specific question and you don't know how to answer it, you're not finding it on the website or in these links, this link down here, Ask the Experts, you can actually submit your question and enter your email address, and we will receive that question, send it on to the appropriate scientist who can answer your question and give you a response. So that's a pretty neat feature. And kind of building off of that, we have a Meet the Scientist portion of the Kids Secret Headquarters where they actually interviewed a few different scientists that work on aquatic invasive species research. And we asked them, you know, what do you do? How did you get interested in your field? What do you like about your job? So if students, you know, are really excited about this topic, they want to learn more, consider career paths, this is a great way to introduce them to people who are actually working in the field. Now, heading back to the Great Lakes page, once the students have done all of the background kind of investigating, learning about each of the species, they've explored all the detectives, met all the suspects, background check, the last step for the students is to go to book them. So this is what this page looks like, and it's basically just a test of their knowledge. So now that they've investigated all the case files, they have the chance to arrest all of the 10 suspects for the crimes that they've committed. So they click on the species, go down, and there's 5 questions each under those headings that were in the background check category. So origin and distribution, transportation, environmental impact, economic impact, and control. So they go through, answer these questions, click the the button down there, and it will actually tell you which ones you've gotten wrong. So if the students are close, they got a couple wrong, they can go back and correct their answers and look up the correct answers. Now for the teachers, all of our educators, where you're going to want to go is right here, this Top Desk Administrator button, and this has all the resources for teachers. So as Kirsten mentioned earlier, we have this Habitatitude website linked right here on the homepage of Top Desk Administrator, and this is where students can come and learn about specifically things that aquarium hobbyists and water gardeners can do. And this comes in handy in a minute. I'm going to mention about stewardship projects. So these are people who are a primary source of spreading invasive species, and so you want to direct your messaging towards these folks. And so this is a good website to get background information on that, as well as down here we have Stop the Aquatic Hitchhikers, and that's geared more towards boaters, recreational water users. And our internet isn't working. But if you go there, you'll see messaging that, or you'll obtain information that you can direct towards boaters. So with those stewardship projects, we think that once your students have become experts on the topic, they're going to want to share their knowledge, they're going to want to make a difference and contribute to the solution. So what we've done is we've had teachers throughout the Great Lakes region work on stewardship projects with their students, and we've housed their overviews and then their project models here on the website so you can get an idea of projects you might want to incorporate in your classroom. So I'll click on this one and see if our internet is working now. So these are the stewardship project summaries, and we've grouped them into sort of grade levels, so 3 through 5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12. And if you click on these links, the teachers have actually written up projects that they've done, just really brief introduction of the project, the objectives, the activities that students participated in, and the different projects that they worked on, and then the outcomes and impacts. So this is a great way to just kind of read through a couple and get ideas of things you might want to do. The other place you can look down here on educational project models has those same projects, but they're broken up by type of project. So if you want to create wanted flyers, we have brochures, activity coloring books, posters, newspapers. There's a ton of different ideas here. Just as an example, I'll click on one of the,
my favorite.
Yeah, this is our favorite, the Aquatic Adventures activity book. So this is a really neat idea. I think this one turned out really well. Every student in the class was responsible for creating a page in this activity book. So they actually, their pictures are on all the pages that they created. So whether it's coloring in the different invaders, they wrote a skit that you can act out, you know, finish drawing the picture, fill in the blank, cartoons, matching the species with their description, fill in the blank, I mentioned that, riddles, yeah. So there's a lot of different ideas here, and this is just one example, but I really recommend that if you're interested in creating a project, a stewardship project with your students, you come here and check this out because there are tons of ideas that you can get. And this I was going to mention as well, in the Top Desk Administrator on the left-hand side at the top, it says Classroom Plants and Animals. Tying back into what Kirsten was talking about earlier, that Don't Let It Loose poster, the entire PDF is available here online. So if you wanted to print that out and hang it in your classroom, I think it's definitely, if you have a classroom pet or any plants, I think this is definitely a good thing to have in your classroom and go over with your students and explain to them what you should be doing with your classroom pet. Additionally, that pledge that Kirsten mentioned earlier is available here on the second link. This is something, if you do have a classroom pet, I encourage you to have your students fill out this form, and it says how you should care for your animal, your pet, or sorry, your plant or animal, as well as the pledge for not letting it loose when you are finished, be it for summer or a fall break, to make sure that you keep that plant or animal and properly dispose of it when that time comes.
Different Great Lakes and how they're different.
Okay, so let's see if there's anything else here. I encourage you all, there's a lot of links here on the left-hand side. I encourage you to just explore, and if you do end up doing a stewardship project with your classroom, we would love to see it. And if you'd like to be featured on our website, we have a drop site for student projects here. So if you fill out this template and send your files, your project documents to this website, Terry Hallisey is our education coordinator here at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. We would be very happy to post it online and serve as an example for other educators who are looking to incorporate stewardship projects in their classroom.
Yeah, and there's so much to explore on this website that it would take a very long time for us to ever get through it. So the other thing is that we did focus on the Great Lakes, and there's a lot of play on words here. I didn't even get the Laurentian thing, realizing that that was part of the Great Lakes. Laurentian, yeah. So if you are from another coastal region, your top 10 suspects will be different. And so you'll have something that's a little bit different. You may have some that are the same. So it'll be, it's very catered to which coast that you happen to be on. So, and if you're not on a coast, if you're landlocked, pick the closest one to you. So, I think that's about all we have. Let's see here. And, yeah, I know. So, we wanted to acknowledge the Great Lakes Sea Grant Network for collaborating on the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant that helps us to do this kind of work. Also, the Skyroots thesis through Oregon Sea Grant and the Oregon State University. Ohio Sea Grant, we couldn't have done this without Jill helping us and her staff helping us, making sure that we didn't screw up this webinar. And then, of course, our Illinois Indiana Sea Grant staff and supporters of us. We've had a lot of tweets going out from our communications team because they love this stuff. So we couldn't have done it without them as well. Here is contact information. We want to make sure that Greg Hitzroth is mentioned because he is our aquatic invasive species outreach specialist. So if you have any really technical questions for him, that's the person you want to contact. And for education questions, either Allison or I or even Terry Hallisey can be reached through these emails, and there's plenty of places to find us. So I think we're pretty much done here. So we can give it back to you, Jill.
Okay, thanks, Kirsten. We have several questions, so let me go through those. One question that we had was someone asking, what does a student need to know from a science perspective to get the most out of Nab the Aquatic Invaders?
That's kind of, that could go a lot of different ways. I think what I would tell a student is that not all animals are native, and that it's good to do research before you grab any classroom pet or any pet for your home. Just because it's in a pet store or biological supply company does not mean that it's native or not invasive. They're not in the business of education, they're in the business of sales. So I would say that students should be encouraged to do research before they purchase anything for a classroom.
Okay, thanks, Kirsten. I had a couple of questions dealing with if there were like pre and post activities to this project, or anything that would be beneficial for a student before venturing onto the site?
Do you know anything?
In terms of pre-test, I don't think we have anything pre-test related.
No, I'm sorry. I meant pre-activities. Like, so are there like any activities that would be helpful for a teacher or a student prior to, like information that they should have prior to venturing onto the site?
I think the intention of the site is to kind of give you all the background information. So in regards to like the top 10 species, all that information is on there. If you want to kind of do some research, maybe find some news articles or see if there's any current events going on in your area, that might be a good way to sort of spur the conversation and get the students excited and realizing, you know, this is a real issue and it's affecting the environment right outside of our school, right outside of our houses, in our neighborhoods. I think that might be a good sort of way to introduce the topic, but in regards to like the species on the website, I think there's a lot of information on the site, so it's sort of serving as that first step to get the students interested and informed on the topic.
Right, and maybe, you know, starting with the question, how many of you have a goldfish? I know I start a lot of presentations that way. The other thing I ask is, especially if it tends to be a community of anglers or, you know, kids that like to fish, is how many of you buy bait to go fishing? So getting that hook question started gets them on the thought process of, well, you know, we need to start thinking about, you know, where does this come from? Where is it going? How does it get here? So if you can get a hook question started, then it kind of brings the opportunity to go to the Nab Aquatic Invader site to kind of investigate a little bit more about the different kinds of invasive species. Now, obviously, goldfish are not on the website. Carp are, and goldfish are a type of carp. But, you know, things like current events, like the goldfish that are exploding in ponds across, you know, in the West right now is a good topical way to start that conversation and start the question of how did this get here? What do you think? And get them to really kind of think about what they're, you know, do the metacognitive thinking of, well, why is this here? And kind of be the 3-year-old. Why is this here? How do you think it got, you know, how did it get here? What can we do about it? Start asking those why questions, and it gets the kids to start really thinking about the whole process and what can be, you know, and where to go from there.
All right, thank you. Another question that we had was, this was dealing with the zebra mussel mania traveling trunk. That link in the education kits seems to be broken, and so they were asking if they were still available.
Yeah, so we're actually revamping the Zebra Mussel Mania traveling trunk right now. So we do have them out in different zoos, aquariums, libraries throughout the Great Lakes region, and they're available for rent and loan, and that's actually on our Illinois-Indiana Sea Grant website. So if that, whomever asked that question wants to send their email address, I can send that link directly, but we are working on fixing that link.
Right, and then there is a PDF version that we do have that lists all of the areas where it's found, where they can be found. We do even have a trunk here that is available and can be shipped out in case there's not one in the area. Allison and I just used this on the Lake Guardian Shipboard Science workshop. And we just picked pieces out of it. And honestly, all of it is items that you can use, that you can grab. They're all homemade items, so somebody can easily make their own trunk. Because this is not a funded project anymore, what we have out there is all that's available on the loan program. But I would be happy to send somebody the curriculum if they email me, and you can see that the items that are used there are everyday items or things that can be easily bought at a local hardware store as well.
Okay, thanks, Kirsten. The other question that we had, and I wasn't sure, when did the Nab the Aquatic Invaders first, when was that first created?
That's a good question. Before we were here. Let's see, let's see if we can, does it have a copyright on it? I know it was a few years ago. That would really be, that's a great question for Terry, who's not here. Let's see. Let me get information. We can find out that information and send that out to anybody who wants to know, but it wasn't, it was within the last 5 to 7 years, I would say.
Can you talk a little bit about what you would consider maybe the coolest stewardship project that you've seen that was generated from, was sparked by this project?
I mean, that's a tough question because there are really a lot of neat stewardship projects that students have done. There have been entire fairs. There were students with the Earth Force project in Chicago, and they actually had a stewardship fair at the Field Museum, and they had songs. So all the students did projects, and then they invited the community, their family, their friends to come to the Field Museum, and they exhibited their different projects. So I really liked that one and that idea of sort of having the students go out in the community, but then bringing them together and then sharing all of their different projects. So there are skits students have done, and they really get into that, songs that they've recorded. They've done radio spots on local radio stations, just kind of doing some PSAs sort of things. You know, it just kind of depends. We have different grade levels, so the younger students like to do the wanted posters is a really popular one, and it's fun, and it has them research, you know, why is it wanted, what's wrong with these different species out in our environment, and, you know, so.
Yeah, I think any project that expands beyond the classroom where the teachers are actually teaching their community makes it more powerful in what they do, because then they have ownership, but they also have become educators themselves.
All right, well, thank you. And I think we actually have all the questions answered. I did get a mention by Doug Jensen of Minnesota. Mentioned the AIS attack packs that was created by Wisconsin Sea Grant that was designed to complement the Nab the Aquatic Invaders. I just put that through the chat feature for all of you to see that link, so that might be a great additional resource for you to check out. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to email me, and I can relay those to Kirsten and Allison. So what I'd like to do is close out the evening by, again, thanking Kirsten and Allison for their willingness to talk to us today about the Nab the Aquatic Invaders website. It's really an excellent discussion. This webinar series is supported by the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. I also wanted to remind everyone that our survey URL for this webinar is in the chat feature, so please take a few minutes to fill that out. And also to refer you to resources on the Organisms in Trade website. Thank you again to Kirsten and Allison and all the participants on this webinar. We hope that this was beneficial, and feel free to join us as we continue this webinar series next Monday, dealing with AIS and Aquaria. I will send the registration out to all of you. Thank you again, Kirsten and Allison, and have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks.